bases on this topic. But I think that unfortunately there's been a horrible event that happened in Georgia. There's a lot of news surrounding that. I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to talk about his father getting arrested, some of the family history there, because this is what you would call like a targeted individual based on his history, based on his activity, based on his mental status. And so there's a lot to unpack there. Also, I didn't tell. I told you I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I was sitting here eating my dinner, my leftover half Italian sub from lunch, and I was just on YouTube on my splash page, and Megyn Kelly was sitting here with Glenn Greenwald, and they're talking about the Nashville Shooters Manifesto, which I know you and I both have questions about. Not all of it's released; some of it's been withheld. Don't know, but we're gonna just try to show you how anytime an event like this happens, I immediately start looking at stuff, just like B does, and maybe we'll go through the process of identifying this. And I think that also for parents in the room, being able to identify some changing or odd behavior with your kids, and then identifying if they're messing around in some of the areas that we're talking about. We also give a brief overview of what we're talking about when we're talking about accelerationism. No, we're not talking about the tech bro e-acts like Beth Bezos and Nick Land and all those people. This is completely different. This is violent, militant accelerationism. I have questions about the Georgia shooter. I got a lot of details there. We're going to go over. And then this clip is interesting because it was her. It's about 4 minutes, Pete, and it's her talking to Megyn Kelly talking to Glenn Greenwald, and they're talking a little bit about the Nashville stuff. I'm just going to highlight a couple things there, but then goes into the Tops grocery store shooter, Buffalo shooter. So that's important to note, especially with what you actually broke on that story. So it's interesting. I think there's a good little. It's about 4 minutes, but I think it's a good. I'll slip it in there somewhere. But first and foremost, how are you this evening? I know you've been busy, and some exciting stuff going on.
Oh, yeah. It's been a really like today's just giving me whiplash. It's been a lot going on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well.
Good, I guess good stuff, good and bad, exciting, like nothing terrible. So there's at least that.
Well, nothing terrible for you, but there was some stuff going on today that was pretty terrible. But
Yeah.
so okay. Well, then I recognize a lot of faces in here, guys. Sorry if you get a little annoyed with this, but we're going to kind of just give a brief introduction into this militant accelerationism and what it is. And then we have real time examples, there's real cases, there's real everything, kind of go through that. But it seems to be that people are actually starting to notice this, which is good. You probably could share some stuff about that, B, as well. But so we will, I guess, let's do the abridged version for the people that have already been in their spaces listening to this versus people that have never been here before. People may have just come here to get the update on the Georgia shooter. I've got information on the dad, on the family, and the signs that were there, and how I'm waiting to see what more is released. But there's a lot there that's already kind of raising the antenna. So, do you want to kind of give a I don't know high level overview of what militant accelerationism is and why we're talking about it in relation to mass casualty events?
Yeah, so militant accelerationism is a form of violent extremism. It's not so much an ideology as it is it's a doctrine, like a set of strategies used by violent extremists. With basically the concept is that if you can spread enough division and chaos within a country and subvert people within the country. Using various means, everything from violent terrorism like mass shootings, for example, all the way to non-violent, maybe political type of stuff. But the goal is to basically divide a country from within and create enough friction and chaos to cause the entire thing to collapse. So the end goal of accelerationism is the complete collapse of the quote West end quote, which is like, mostly the US, but obviously UK's in there, and there's, Canada, just Western countries. But predominantly in the US, we're talking about is people who are working together And sometimes not even working together, sometimes just working in concert to bring about the fall of the United States. And we can, we can delve more into that, but that's the gist of it. I guess one thing I would say is I think a lot of people are getting confused by, for example, a lot of these people who are doing these mass shootings, some of them are neo Nazis, right? But it's not that like all, or like let's call them, let's just be more specific. Let's say like white supremacists, right? Yes, there's been white supremacist mass shooters, but most white supremacist communities, and as terrible as I think they are, yeah, I don't agree with that ideology, right? But it's less that all white supremacists are accelerationists, and more that people with accelerationist motives have infiltrated these types of fringe movements in an attempt to provoke people within those movements to violent extremism. So that's what we're seeing happening with a lot of mass shooters. We're seeing a lot of these people infiltrating various communities where people are already kind of on the verge of being violent and just provoking them, and even using individualized grooming tactics to, groom them into committing something like a mass shooting or a stabbing or, maybe shooting up a power substation or some kind of attack on the infrastructure. So that's how these guys operate, and we've definitely had a theory for years that mass shooters were being groomed, and now it's finally starting to turn out like people are starting to understand that no, that is actually happening. This is not a conspiracy theory; it's a fact. And the question of who's doing the grooming has also become more and more clear over time, that it's this group of violent extremists who really just want to see our country fall. And some of them are foreign backed. Some of them are just crazy domestic terrorists. But ultimately, that's what we're talking about when we talk about accelerationism being behind some mass shootings. Not all mass shootings, but some mass shootings.
Right, and it's important distinction to make here, right? The important distinction is this the neo-Nazi stuff, the white supremacist stuff, even the more like pedophilic stuff, and also then that goes into the extortion networks and grooming kids and kind of trapping younger ones into this loop of self-harm or harm to others, um, using extortion methods, which we'll talk about 764 here. But it's a costume, like, so when you're saying like satanic pedophilic cult, it's it's basically a one size fits all. I don't care what community I can infiltrate. If you like this, you get more of it, and then they push you down the line. And so this is stuff that you're going to have to watch out with your kids.
Hmm.
So I tell you what, here let me play about 4 minutes of this, and I want to get your reaction to this, and then maybe give the details on the top shooter, the Buffalo shooter case. This is going to blend the Nashville shooter stuff. It's only about 2 minutes of that, and another 2 minutes of the top shooter, because she's showing the false dichotomy. But I don't really much care what she's trying to demonstrate here politically, but there's a lot we can talk about with both these instances, and it'll kind of paint the picture a little bit better for people. So I'll play it now.
Big piece dropped today, and this is big. In your top answer, you talked about how, the Democrats are fond of these tactics to take down people they don't like, and one of them was in connection with that Buffalo mass shooting. They blamed Republicans for for the shooting, citing items that appeared in the shooter's manifesto about the great replacement theory. And we just pulled, just for our audience's edification, a couple of examples. The Atlantic, why Tucker Carlson should want the Buffalo manifesto made public. Salon, mass shooting in Buffalo, Tucker Carlson, another right wing conspiracy theorist, share the blame. LA Times, white terrorists have Tucker Carlson syndrome. Rolling Stone, the Buffalo shooter is not a lone wolf. He's a mainstream Republican. That was all based on what they found in the Buffalo shooter's manifesto about the so called great replacement theory. This was a shooting at which he killed multiple Black grocery store goers. Okay.
All right, let's stop there before we go to the Nashville thing. So that's why I thought this clip was so important, B, because this is what happens.
Who is
But
that though? Who
that
is
was
that
Megyn
talking?
Kelly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Megyn
Okay.
Kelly and Glenn Greenwald.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was just reading headlines from articles blaming Tucker Carlson and this kid was a Republican. This is not political. This is not political. Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you break it down for people? Yeah.
Stupid as shit. Yeah. No, she's right. Well, I mean, I don't really, with that very limited context, I don't know what her point was, but I'm sure that what she was trying to get at is that that's fucking retarded. Like, um,
Well, okay, I'll play the rest of the clips to get more
okay.
context, I guess. I
Yeah.
guess you don't get it, but
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do
she was
that. Let's
saying it
listen
was
to the whole
political,
thing.
and I'm trying to give the example that it's not. Here's why. But anyway.
Yes. Yes. I agree.
Now let's go to the mass shooting we saw in Nashville at a school um, on March 27th, 2023, where this trans person, it's a female, said that she was a male, showed up and killed 3 9-year-old children and 3 adult staff members. Ever since, where are we now? It's September 4th today. That's March of 2024. This is March of 2023. They have not released this shooter's manifesto. Journalists have tried to get it. Independent media on the outside have tried to get it. Stephen Crowder's the one who actually made the biggest progress between then and now, getting a leak of at least some of this person's writings. But since then, we've been told by the officials, state and federal, no, it's too dangerous to share. Like you can't see it because it'll endanger others. Well, what does that mean? They're all full of nutty ramblings. We've seen that in almost all the manifestos. None of them is a great thing that you want to share with children, but we're adults who would like to understand motivations and how to prevent the next one. And how are we going to do that if we don't understand what this person's mindset was? Maybe it was just a loon. Maybe it was political violence. Let's find out. Take our word for it. Take our word. We're not going to. Well, now the Tennessee Star's editor in chief, Michael Patrick Leahy, has gotten his hands on it, and he's released 90 pages of this person, the shooter's 2023 journal. They say that they legally obtained the journal from a source.
So anyway, what I was trying to demonstrate there was number one, mainstream legacy media is reporting on it, releasing the manifesto from tops right away, saying, "Oh, look, he's citing the Great Replacement theory," and so they can attack Republicans with it. And so they're saying, "Yeah, this kid's a Republican." Then, because this is an LGBTQIA unhinged person, Aubrey Hale, which has been under 22 years of psychological help, for God's sakes, um, they won't release the manifesto. Eventually, now they released it, so on and so forth. But they still haven't released everything. And there's a few things in that manifesto that's making me, and I know making you ask questions, because I saw your post about it the other day as well. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because number one, if you could explain to people, number one, that it's obviously not a lone wolf situation. You have proof. You have seen that this kid was groomed to go out and commit this violence. And at the same time, another vulnerable community is this trans community, especially with a lot of mental illness that we're seeing over there. And so I'm just asking questions about that one. And I want to see the rest of it, because there's a couple indications in there. And that's one of the most vulnerable groups out there. Now, well, I'll get to that in a minute. But I want your take on it. What do you think? Well, no,
Well, first of
first,
all,
yeah.
uh, yeah. So, like, first of all, I mean, even the right wing media has gotten this completely wrong. I don't know if they're doing it on purpose because they also kind of want to politicize it because that's the only way to get clicks. I would know, trust me. But I think what she's saying isn't necessarily correct either, because the Buffalo shooter, he put his manifesto out on Discord, and he shared it. And there's an article in the Nest. Go read it. It's on my Substack. You can read exclusive information that nobody else has ever released about Peyton Gendron. I know who groomed the kid. I know who groomed the kid. Okay. I'm not going to talk about that person because he hasn't been prosecuted or whatever. So I'm not trying to like open myself up to anything. But I know who some of these people who were behind the scenes. Peyton Gendron was in a Discord server that was his own private diary. He was writing out a bunch of things, including his plan, and he had a manifesto. It was like 185 pages or something like that. That he hold on one second. Can I share this space? How do I share this space with somebody who's asking real quick?
Yeah. So you like a normal post, how you share a normal post. So just
Oh, okay.
go down to the bubble, and then
Sorry,
just hit,
I'm an
yeah.
idiot. Um, yeah, okay. So So he had this Discord diary with this big manifesto that was linked to it. And he went to all of these kind of extremist Discord servers and some of his friends. And he posted links to his Discord diary and his manifesto in all of these servers. And I think he posted it on like 8chan. So when these guys post their manifestos to the public, that's what makes it a manifesto. A manifesto is something that you want people to read in your wake to hopefully inspire more shootings. Okay. What Audrey Hale had that we received the other day, which was just like literally 40 something pages of like maniacal rambling, like it was like a 17-year-old's journal, like it really was a nothing burger. However, that diary wasn't a manifesto. There's a difference. A manifesto is something that has an explicit motive and intent and tells you, here's my ideology. Here's why I want to inspire more people. We're talking about Ted Kaczynski here. Okay. We're talking about Unabomber manifesto. That's where this kind of thing came from. What Audrey Hale put out wasn't a manifesto. It was a diary. It was a physical, tangible thing that she did not post online for other people to see. That's why we had the Buffalo shooting manifesto right away, because it got released online. Audrey Hale's journal was a tangible item, and that had to go through various legal processes. What's annoying is that the judge in that case, she actually sealed the rest of the evidence, which was over 100 gigabytes of other electronic evidence that was seized from the house that nobody ever saw. And what's extra annoying is that a lot of people, once they got this like 45 pages of nothing burger, scribbling or whatever, they were like, see, this confirms everything we thought. Case closed. No, the case isn't closed. There's 100 gigabytes of electronic evidence that the judge is still sitting on. And none of y'all care because you got the answer that you wanted. Like, they were trans, case closed. That's really annoying to me. The reason that it never got released to the public immediately is because she didn't release it to the public immediately. They never release manifestos like this. They would never put that out there on the news if it wasn't already out in the public. And even now, they're pretty hesitant to post actual excerpts from these manifestos because of this copycat theory, which I could talk about another time because I really don't buy it. However, what she is saying about the manifesto being great replacement. Yeah, he did have that. But like Tucker Carlson in this, he was not right wing. He explicitly says he's not right wing. This kid's an eco-fascist. He's like a far left. So like he's like definitely not like to call people like that Republican. And my dad's a Republican. Okay, this kid wants to basically return to primitive anarchism and put everybody in labor camps to benefit the environment. Okay, this isn't your father's, Republican kind of party kind of situation. So it's silly when the left does that. It's also silly when the right tries to, do the same thing. The right's not without blame, right? Because it's the pushback and it's a pendulum swing, because every time the left tries to foam at the mouth about a quote right-wing shooter, now every time there's a shooting, you have the right and the left racing to prove that it was the other party so they can point fingers at them. And guess what? That's exactly what the accelerationists want you to do. They want us to fight over this instead of trying to look deeper. So some of these things, like I mentioned with the trans shooting thing, with the great, he's a Republican, he's a Trump supporter. Okay. All of those things are what I call thought enders. They're thought enders. They're developed to make you go, see, case closed. There's nothing more to it because I got my answer. And they're designed to make you stop asking questions and start pointing your finger at the opposite political party. So that's what happened with Gendron on the left. That's what happened with Hale on the right. This Georgia shooter, I have a hard time. I have a hard time with how I feel about a 14-year-old kid who's clearly being abused by his parents. Like, it's a really sad situation. I don't know that there's necessarily any evidence that there was an accelerationist motive here, but that doesn't matter, because even if this kid wasn't groomed by accelerationists will take this situation and they will try to astroturf specific narratives, like trolling people and saying that he was trans, for example. Anything they can do to get you guys riled up in the wake of a shooting, they're going to do that as well. So that's even if this kid was just kind of like a nutcase, the accelerationism component still applies because they're going to take advantage of the fallout and try to, create the same result.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like I said, the reason I'm bringing this up is just because it is a mass, casualty event. Now, there's a couple things here. There's a couple things here about it. I don't know if you saw this. I kind of was like just like throwing stuff together in a thread today when I I saw that Colin Gray, his father, his garbage father, was arrested and he was charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second degree murder, 8 counts of cruelty to children. Um, and then there's a family history here. So let me go through the family history here. So his mom, Marcy, had prior arrests, and as close as last year, including in November 23rd, she had possession of meth, sale and distribution of dangerous drugs, concealing identity of a vehicle. She was separated from his father, Colin, after 14 years of marriage due to domestic violence. She claimed in Facebook posts that he suffered incredible abuse as a child, including a broken arm while asleep at 8. Blames substance abuse. His home life was terrible, filled with fighting parents and likely to abuse himself as well as from an angry father. According to a junior witness, Liela Sayarath on CCN, Colt Gray was quiet. He habitually skipped school. Quote, he never really talked. He was really quiet. And, quote, but when he would have talked, it was one word answers and short statements. He was sitting beside her that morning in class and left, then came back with a gun. The teacher wouldn't let him re enter. He turned on another class. They had hunting guns in the house. Colt was investigated by the FBI for making threats at the age of 13 on a gaming site. I'm assuming Discord, maybe Twitch, probably Discord. They said that there was no evidence of the pictures and guns and threats. No charges were filed. Then, apparently, his father, Colin, bought him the rifle used as a gift for Christmas. The reporting was wrong on this. It was Christmas, not his 14th birthday. Colin Gray has been arrested and charged with 4 counts of felony murder along with other charges. Uh, and then he goes into debunk. But Colt was quiet. He kept to himself. He responded with short answers to end conversations. He was antisocial. His home life led to whatever then was able to make him violent. I'm not sure the FBI, I'm not surprised the FBI let him go. These agencies never really helped abused families. They groom them. Well, that's wrong, Dustin. I'm going to talk to you why that's wrong. That's why I'm bringing this up, because of some of the stuff that's in here. Is because he could have been just an abused kid, quiet, shy, kind of nuts. And the fact that people are like, oh no, the FBI got him on a list. They're like, we'll add you to our list of people we can groom for violence. How did you get the weapon? All that same bullshit. He's on SSRIs, all that nonsense, right?
More thought enders, right?
Right, exactly. So this is why I'm reading this, though. It's very important because I, that I know now what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that he was groomed by anybody. I'm saying that he was making threats on a gaming website. The FBI doesn't have the resources to watch this kid 24/7, as we know, because they're locking up Catholics and pro-lifers and school board parents and MAGA folk, right? And so all the resources have been redirected away from people that are on the ground that can actually do the work, as we've seen evidence of. So the feds didn't groom him. The only grooming going on is what we have proof of in these court documents, say Butcher or Acid or Kyle Spitz or all these people that are going to be serving time. What about Cadenhead and 764? It's like we're going to go into all that, but you see what I'm saying on this? There is some stuff here that's kind of bothering me a little bit. It's just kind of sitting with me. And the reason I have no doubt that the reason that the father's getting charged is because he got him a weapon. He was 14, got him a weapon after it was known that he was displaying like psychotic behavior. So, but that's what I wanted to add to this. That was kind of the update, and that's why also Colin Gray is being charged as well, is because of all of this. So
Yeah, I have such a hard time. Like
I hear you. I
when
hear you.
I don't know why. I mean, it is so much harder with like kids. I mean, 14, that it's a kid. He's a child. Um, and it's hard for me to see. And I've even had, like, I think I've told you guys about this before, but like I had a 764 member who was, threatening to kill and rape me and come to my house like almost every day, sending me these like serious threats, sending me dead animal pictures, all kinds of stuff. Well, and I obviously made law enforcement reports about it. Well, eventually I found out that he was a 13-year-old kid. And as much as pain and like stress as this kid had put me through, I just I couldn't see him as anything other than a victim because he's
Correct.
a kid who's been groomed and he's been groomed by these evil, evil people. And at the same time, I understand the argument that like the kid's a little psychopath and he shouldn't be in society. But at the same time, it's like, man, what a terrible situation because these kids are never going to be normal again, right? And they're victims in a sense that they were like in the case of this Georgia shooter, kind of seems like he came from a really abusive household, which is really unfortunate, right? And in the case of the kid who was threatening me from 764, he'd been groomed by the adults in the room to do stuff like that and extorted and stuff. So, man, it's just really hard for me as a person who advocates for kids to not see people that young as being victims. Um,
No, they're absolutely victims. That's the point. But again, they're victims, and what I'm trying to do here, because I do care about the kids, and I do want to avert this stuff, and I do want to make sure that if these kids are in environments like this, they get taken out. Number one of those environments, or number two, they get the help that they need. Um, here's an interesting one. This is a really interesting one. I think this will be a good segue into 764. Because basically what I'm going to do, what I want to end it on before we bring people up for like questions and comments, which I want to do. So like after we kind of get through this a little bit, this overview, I really want people to come up, ask questions, anything you got that we can kind of illuminate on this topic. Because again, like her and I can go back all day on this because well we know it. But let's talk about Kyle Spitz for a second because this is an interesting one, and we're talking about victims and and I'll leave the story off, and I want you to kind of take it from there if you can be. But you guys may or may not remember Kyle Spitz. Kyle Spitz. This video went around. I loved how you included Salty in that because Salty's funny. I like Salty Cracker a lot.
Now, I
But
mean, I just really like the title of his
yeah,
video. Family
yeah.
that looks like a bunch of meth addicts shoot at each other. I was like, that's a perfect descriptor.
Yeah, Salty's
No,
great.
no shade to him. Like that
Uh-uh.
video wasn't meant to throw shade to him. I just
No,
really
no,
like the title of his video.
no. Me too. Yeah, no,
And I
me too.
wanted to highlight that there was like big exposure on that story too.
Well, and that's what I'm going to bring up. So if
Yeah.
you guys remember the Kyle Spitz story, you may or may not know the name, but I almost guarantee you remember the video. So the video starts off with Kyle, who is the camera guy, laying in bed, and all of a sudden this crackhead stepdad or mom's boyfriend smoking a cigarette comes in and starts pointing a gun at him. And he's like, "Go ahead, shoot me, man." You could just tell like how empty Kyle
Drugged
is
out. He
when
was
you listen
on
to him. He's so
drugs.
empty. Yeah. And so the boyfriend or stepdad or whatever points a gun at Kyle. Go ahead, shoot me, man. And then it pans to the hallway, and the mom's pants fall down the shore. I mean, the whole thing is like a trailer park, like
There's
just
a lot going on.
just a lot going on in this video. But you guys all, I know you guys will remember this video. And so then eventually it cuts to the hallway, and the boyfriend takes a shot. Boom, and it clipped his ear. And he looks down on the ground, and the mom is like, "Oh my God, you shot him!" La, la, la," just in speaking trailer, um, and speaking meth, and there's blood dripping down, and then it pans to like a selfie with it. You can see the blood on his shirt. Well, that video that went viral. Why don't you explain how you actually figured out what was going on here, and then we can kind of describe what 764 is.
Well, I saw the video just like anybody else and was like, wow, that's crazy, and then just moved on with my day. But I had been tracking this spooky satanic neo-Nazi cult called the Order of Nine Angles around the internet for a while, like a couple of years at this point. Because there was some evidence to suggest that some of those guys may have been behind some of the mass shooters that were being groomed on Telegram, mostly on Telegram. And so when I saw that video, I went to the comments and I saw somebody commenting about being a victim of his, and they had mentioned something about him being part of something called 764. And I immediately recognized that because the FBI had already put out a press release about it a few months earlier, which I knew about again because I'd been tracking around the satanic cult that was said to be pulling strings within that group and influencing them. And so we already knew about that cult. So whenever I saw the victim saying that, I knew that this was something I needed to like look into much more closely.
Yeah, so one of the victims commented after you just randomly went back to the comments, and then obviously you spoke with that victim. You've spoken with a lot of victims of Kyle's and others. It's how you've gained insight to a lot of this stuff as well. But but again, I want to kind of explain to the group what 764 is, because when I first started getting into this info, it seemed isolated to me. I didn't really understand it in the very beginning, right? I thought it was like just one little group, but it's actually like a massive umbrella, almost an umbrella term to describe various different groups and subsets and all these things. But can you kind of break down what 764 is?
Yeah, so 764 is an umbrella term that we use just for simplicity's sake. But in reality, it's just one of many of these groups of people online, small online communities that participate in child exploitation and extortion and other cyber crimes. It's
And before we
part
go,
of a
and before
broad.
we go any further,
uh
child exploitation and extortion, to people who maybe like you're using the term correctly, but I think exploitation has been misused quite a bit,
Yeah,
and
sure.
so I think we should be more specific.
They're being sexually exploited and then extorted into sending more and more harmful content under threats of either, exposing them to their family members for, shaming them, or even as severe as threatening to come to their house and murder them and their families. So they're basically securing, compromising photos of these kids, and then they are extorting them, right? And exposing them to a series of increasingly evil demands, asking them to cut themselves, carve their abusers' names into their bodies with a knife on video, asking them to kill their pets on video, organize blood into, like paint satanic symbols on their walls and blood, up to even trying to convince kids to commit suicide on camera. It was very dark. The worst stuff that you can imagine happening to a kid online is what's happening in these groups. It's very, 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 very serious. Um, it- there's nothing more serious than this. I've seen some things that will probably haunt me for the rest of my life while doing this work, that I would go to the ends of the earth to make sure that even one kid could be saved from this kind of horror. Um, and so that's what this group of people does. 764 is just one of those groups. That's why I've been calling it the 764 network. It also has the added advantage of pissing off members of splinter groups who don't want to be associated with 764, but really they're just as bad. So they message me and they're like, oh, I'm actually part of 565, and like I don't care. I don't care. I think it's funny that they get mad. So I'm going to continue to call it 764 Network, despite what the little child grooming terrorists have to say about it. Um, this is part of all of these communities, they're part of a broader community known as CALM. CALM is like a decade old cybercrime community with a lot of different tentacles. Only one of the tentacles really has a couple of the tentacles have child abuse components, but almost all of them have some sort of cybercrime, whether that be hacking, extortion, swatting, bomb threats, school shooting threats. It's just basically a bunch of little shitty criminals um, that congregate online in these various fringe communities. And so yeah, that's basically what. So Calm was around for a long time, and Calm had been doing extortion for a long time. However, the satanic elements and the more extreme, egregious child abuse elements are more recent developments in Calm. And there's a theory that by a lot of researchers that some of that really sinister stuff is the product of the Order of Nine Angles satanic cult injecting specific ideologies into that group to try to create a more evil section community of people. So hopefully that kind of explained a very complex topic.
No, that's actually perfect. No, that's exactly right. Looks like down in the chat, I don't know if you saw this. I've never seen this, but it's correct. It looks like Jennifer Izell posted a link to trumi.com. It's an article by by Annie Hall from March 19th of this year, The Dark Side of Discord, Exposing Group 764. I haven't been able to read all the way through it. It looks somewhat correct. Looks like we got some screenshots here. Kind of shows how they groom, getting them cut themselves. If you notice in that Kyle Spitz video, by the way, he's a cutter himself. Like he cuts his own arm.
Yeah,
You
they're
can see the scars.
all of those. I mean, I think most of them have been kind of victims in their own right, but
Right.
Kyle Spitz is one example of a person who's been an adult for a long time. He doesn't have any excuse, like some of the younger ones
No.
do. But yeah, so Trumi. I've never been to Trumi.com, but
It
yeah,
looks
I
like a
mean, it looks
Substack
fine.
almost.
There's also an article on Wired. I've written several Substacks about it as well. If you want to go read, I'm going to go, I'll post the link to my YouTube here. So you guys can go and watch my 3-part series on this group if you're really interested. And let's see. There we go. There's my 3-part series. I'll link it. So yeah, you guys can go watch that later on. If you like true crime and you like to watch true crime at night, then by all means, it should take you about 40 minutes to get through all 3 of those videos.
Yeah, no, that's great. And also plug your Substack real quick because you just dropped a new article, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, I dropped an article talking kind of what we were talking about at the beginning about it's called Known to the FBI. That's the title of this article. And it really just talks about what my experiences have been. I had the, I guess, experience of seeing a potential mass shooter get arrested based on my tip to the FBI, which was really something that was kind of like almost like I would say, a significant experience in my life in general. But
Yeah, let's go through that. That's actually because that's really important.
my
I mean,
Substack article's there in the nest if you guys want
is
to
that
see
what it's
it.
about?
It's the one
Is
with
in there?
Bart Simpson. Yeah, it's in there.
Okay. Yeah, go
Um,
read that, guys.
yeah,
That's
I
a
mean,
wild story.
it's short. I mean, basically, I saw a guy online who was an incel, and he was threatening to murder his ex-girlfriend. And he was also making references to like a college campus, saying stuff like, I'm going to go rock this campus and it didn't have to end this way. And you're all going to get what you deserve. I mean, he was saying stuff that was so imminent, and it was like, and it wasn't even, it was like, I'm going to do this tomorrow morning. So it's like really specific, I think
Well,
that a lot of people underestimate like the bar that has to be reached to be an illegal threat online. It actually has to be something that's like, I'm going to kill this person tomorrow with a knife. Like it's like got to be so specific for them to actually take action. I think that's a common misunderstanding. But anyways, I found this guy online, so I escalated it up. The details are in that Substack article, but I escalated it up the chain, and within 12 hours, they had arrested this guy. In fact, he was arrested in like January, I think, and he's still being held pending trial. He was indicted by a grand jury in March. And he's still in jail. So like it took them 12 hours to find this guy based on my tip after seeing him on Twitter and saying this guy's about to go shoot up a college campus. And it took them 12 hours to arrest this guy. And that was, to me, that was like, wow, that the system can work sometimes. Does it work all the time? No, because there's a really large disconnect between people like us who are on the ground floor, right? We're honestly, people like us are in a great position to stop these things. If you see somebody online ruminating like that, DM me because I can help you escalate it, or I can escalate it, and we can try to stop a mass shooting. Like it's really that powerful. And unfortunately, the FBI, I want to be generous and say that they're under resourced. They are under resourced, but there's a lot of nuance to the subject that I think a lot of people miss, and so that's what's in that Substack article.
Yeah, and
And
I
the
highly
other thing I would say real quick is that I think my point here is that the system can work sometimes, and it does. And the thing is that it probably works a lot more than we realize, but those things don't make news stories. Like you didn't hear about my story on the news, right? because nothing happened. Nobody got hurt. And so even if there's like, 1,000 people stopped for every one person that gets through, we would only hear about the one person that gets through. So in a way, it's kind of like a frequency bias where we're always seeing the ones that slip through the cracks, and we're kind of ignoring the fact that the system does actually stop mass shootings sometimes too.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to point out. Like, listen, I'm not here simping for the government. You know my stance on all that shit, and I'm not simping. But I can tell you that there are good people in law enforcement that do want to stop these things, and I have seen evidence that they do. So I just want to point that out, and I'm just tired of this reflex, like, oh, he was known to the FBI, therefore, oh, was there SSRIs too? Well, that must be it. It's like you said, that's a conversation ender. It's over at that point. It's like now it's politicized. We're not actually having the conversation, no investigation.
It's so disappointing to me when I see people who I really like, but they're
Yeah,
repeating one of those tropes about like SSRIs. It's like, do we have any information about this kid yet? What makes you think he was on SSRIs? He was 14 and his parents were drug addicts. That's not the type of kid who's usually on SSRIs. Like, first of all. Second of all, like, the fact that we just say, oh, it was SSRIs, end of story. And it's like, we don't even have that information yet. What are you talking about? Like,
right.
there is an objective truth, guys, to every story, to every situation. There is an objective truth. And if you're so blinded by bias that you've already got the answer you want and you're just going to stop looking now, you'll never find that truth. If you've already been kind of biased into think, put yourself in a box of believing something like that.
Yep. Yeah. And then you get one little answer and it's a confirmation bias. It's like, man, you really got to look into this stuff. And again, I mean, I wish everybody would dig deep on the stuff that we're talking about like we do, but not everybody does. But
No, no, not everybody could. It's impossible.
yeah,
Like
that's
I
true.
wouldn't wish this on any, like, you would have to be a crazy person like me to like
Oh yeah,
continuously do this shit
yeah. I mean, like
for
I'm
no
total.
money.
Yeah, I know. I'm totally a crazy person. Yeah, this is all done for free, by the way. Um, but yeah, no, and that's why I think it's important to continually talk about. But most importantly, I'm appealing to the parents, or I'm appealing to people who have family members that are parents, and start having these conversations with their children. And with you are getting enough information that you can probe as an intelligent adult over a child or a younger person, and figure out where they're at. And
Yeah.
so to kind of land the Kyle Spitz story, Kyle Spitz, it was found out later that he was in fact part of 764 and he did have victims, but he wasn't arrested for that. He was arrested. Why don't you explain to everybody what he was arrested for?
Um, well, Kyle
Well, he
Spitz was,
was. I guess he
yeah.
kind of was, but there wasn't a direct investigation because somebody on Twitter said, "Hey, I'm a victim." Because this story, as wild as it was on video, and it is, it's the craziest 50 seconds you'll ever watch. But it's somehow much worse.
Oh, I accidentally deleted it from the nest when I was trying to scroll through because I'm dumb.
It's up there. I got it up there.
Sorry.
It's the
No,
first.
I accidentally X'd it when I was trying to press the
It's
arrow.
still there.
I'm tired. Oh, okay. Actually, Kyle Spitz did get
Oh,
arrested because of the viral situation.
right. But
As a result of it, because his victims started to finally have a voice. They had been trying to get attention to law enforcement for a long time and having a hard time. Eventually, one of his young victims, who I had been advocating for, she was brave enough to agree to go to the FBI and do a forensic interview. And it was only a couple of days later that he was arrested, and
right. But
charged with
we got to land the
horrific
story.
stuff.
We got to land the story here. The
Mhm.
mom, that whole thing. We got to land
Oh,
that
yeah.
story.
Well, yeah, that kinda ended up being, I mean, it's not irrelevant, but, like, well, yeah, so, the I don't know, I still don't know what happened to that woman. I still don't buy that story that she had, like, a hemorrhage in her esophagus or something, I guess. I don't know. There was blood everywhere, y'all. Like, it was an insane scene. There was a video that I got sent, and it was, like, Kyle Spitz and his mom, who was in that original video. She's dead now on the ground with blood everywhere. He's like crying and like groping her breast, and like it's a very bizarre, strange video. I wouldn't recommend watching it because it's just like, there's gore, and then there's like, what the hell did I just watch? That was psychologically. When I saw that video, dude, I must have spent 2 nights awake staring at my ceiling. I don't know. There's something weird about it. Just evil. Anyways, his mom died, and I got sent that video, and I contacted law enforcement in Nashville because I thought that he had murdered his mom, and I thought that somebody just sent me a video of somebody murdering his mom. And it ended up that she died from a fentanyl overdose, and then somehow there was blood everywhere. I don't know, bro. But yeah, so then he got put in a mental hospital, and he had his phone there, and um after that young victim came forward to the forensic interview, they were able to get a warrant to take his phone from him while he was at the hospital, and that's when they went ahead and brought forth the charges of child exploitation, animal torture. He'd been torturing animals and had all the evidence on his phone, possession of child pornography, and some other horrible things that this guy had done. He was really, really a monster. And if you look at his mugshot, which again, you can watch really concise videos about this on my YouTube that's up there in the nest. I mean, it's my YouTube, so I'd appreciate it if you go and subscribe. But, even if you just watch the videos, I think most people have responded really positively to those videos. You'll learn a lot, but yeah, you'll see the mugshot of him, and oh my god, this guy looks like his soul left his body long ago. Like, he just looks like an evil serial killer. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that comes to the victim. That comes to the victim versus monster part of this that I want to talk about, because these kids, a lot of them that are participating in these networks, they are victims. Some of them unwittingly, some of them wittingly, meaning they got tricked into exploitation. Someone, I don't know, hacked their computer or device or whatever, got bad stuff on them, and held it over their heads. They didn't want to go to their parents. They didn't want to get their parents in trouble or their parents killed. We talked about the extortion part of that, but
Right.
also one of the biggest problems were that a lot of these kids that were maybe going to be carrying out this stuff, maybe they were being arrested, but they weren't really going after the groomers, the people that were actually doing the grooming over and over and over again. It wasn't just one; it was many. Like that one small clip that you had of that guy. He's an older guy. I can't remember his name. When he talked about all his kids he's got, or all the people he's got.
Are you talking about Rabid when he's on the Discord call?
Yeah, Rabbit.
That's such a spook. Like, that's a really powerful clip.
Yeah,
It's powerful clip to hear these guys talking about the things they do to kids. It's just really upsetting. But yeah, he's saying, like, yeah, I'm part of a cult, like a really bad person cult. Like, we make kids do all this stuff. And he's just like talking about it so casually, right? You're just like, what an evil fuck. Like, what an actual monster. So that guy, he's in jail. He took a plea deal, but I think he's probably looking at life. I have to go check back when his next court date is, but he hasn't been sentenced yet. Um, a couple of other ones have been receiving life sentences, basically. So they're not going easy on these guys when they arrest them. Like, you see a lot of pedophiles get like slaps on the wrist, and they're treating these guys like the monsters they are. I haven't seen any of them get I haven't seen anybody get a sentence below 10 years. But some of them are also like 17, 18, and like lower level criminals, whereas the higher level ones, like Rabid, the guy we were just talking about, and some of the other ones, those guys are looking at life sentences. They're never letting those guys back out, including Kyle. He's done. He's not gonna see the light of day until he's an old man, if that, which is great.
yeah, no, exactly right. I was looking for the clip. I'll find it. I think it's on the third video, right? Or is it second?
No, it's on the second video. Oh, is it? Bro, I don't even remember anymore.
All right. Well, but I want to bring up too for the people.
No, it's on the second video. It's about scrubbing through. Um,
Um, what
sorry, go ahead.
I'm kind of skimming here
It's
because I
19 minutes in, if you want to look at 19 minutes and 14 seconds on the second
on
video.
second. Oh, here I found it. But there's the black and red. 1 second.
Yeah.
I'll play it for everybody so you can hear it. But before I do there, you guys also remember another mass casualty event or stabbing event in Turkey. Turns out he was also part of one of these networks, right?
Yeah, he was connected to the MKU
Mm-hmm.
portion of that, which is talked about in part 3 of my docu-series.
Yeah, highly recommend it. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna get here. I found it. I'm gonna go ahead and play this. I'll probably start at 19, a little bit. You said 1914.
Yeah, start like 19, and you can hear maybe me leading into it.
I know, I'm sure you hate hearing yourself, but here we go.
That's fine.
Oh, Twitter playback. Dude, they have got to get their video in order. This is crazy. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I have to refresh. It's so ridiculous. Dude, video playback on this platform. How are they going to roll out video? Oh, especially. Hang on. Let me put it on mute. But can you talk a little bit more about that Turkish stabbing a little bit? Because what group that we found in the MKU? Just kind of briefly talk about it because that's butcher stuff.
Well, yeah, he was definitely connected to this guy Butcher, who was arrested also last month on charges of planning a mass casualty event in New York City. So some of these guys we're talking about who are grooming mass shooters, they're also grooming people to commit stabbings and other kinds of mass casualty attacks. Like they are literally terrorists. Like these are people either in within the United States or sometimes very often in Eastern Europe or other parts of the world, who want to attack the U.S. by proxy, but the only means they have to do that is by grooming a person within the U.S. to basically be a terrorist by proxy, which is very similar to like the ISIS model, which was called the virtual planner model, where they would basically have somebody geolocated elsewhere, working for ISIS and grooming homegrown violent extremists to go, commit terror attacks for ISIS. So this is a straight out of the ISIS playbook. Nothing new under the sun. Um, which is why it's always been so surprising to me that people thought it was a big conspiracy theory that mass shooters were being groomed. Like, of course they are. This has been going on forever. But this mass stabber in Turkey, he was also inspired by some of these groups, which are fueled by accelerationism. Like they literally just want to see things collapse and cause chaos, and that's what they do. They inspire people or provoke people to go out and commit these kind of terror attacks on behalf of the group.
Yep, this is crazy. Now, getting back to what we were talking about here, how he was so cavalier about what he does with all these people. Here, I got it right here.
47-year-old Richard Densmore, who went by the name Rabbit, ran a Discord server rife with abuse and illegal content, which he called Sewer. A leaked conversation excerpt showed Densmore expressing interest in forming a satanic blood cult. I have little children cut themselves for me and do weird shit. And, I might have people, strangle themselves with a book and cable or kill their pets or just do weird shit. And I record it. I have other people record it. And then, I'm part of a cult, like a really bad people cult. Once Kyle spits and can't.
So, what can you kind of give what happened with him? Because I saw the mugshot, obviously.
Yeah, like I said, like he ran a server called Sewer, where basically it was the same 764 network stuff where they would groom kids into cutting themselves or sexually exploiting themselves on camera, and then just try to, like, their goal is to be the most evil, so they try to top each other by getting the kids to do more and more horrific things, up to killing their family pets or abusing their siblings or even committing suicide. So it's the worst stuff you can imagine. Like if I had my way, these people, we wouldn't even be wasting our resources keeping them alive in jail. Like these guys actually deserve the death penalty. Like I'm not really like a religious person necessarily, but like these people are demons. They are literally demons. Like they are monsters. So I can't even emphasize this enough. Like you don't hate them enough.
You really don't. You really don't. These are vile people. You know, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me where I'm able to turn it off. The gravity of what I'm looking at, to talk about these things, to go through them. I'm able to turn off something where I'm just like, I got to get through this, man. I can't. I can't shy away from this. This stuff needs to be talked about. Um, and you're a soldier for always going through it as well. Like I guess I don't wish this on anybody, but the amount of evil that this is, and you're right. Like it's so crazy to me. It absolutely feels like a competition. Like, take the worst of the worst, like, I don't know, serial killers in the world and put them in a room together and let them chat all day. The stuff that you would probably hear would be very similar to the things that you see or the things that you read in the Hater's Handbook, or the stuff that you're all the propaganda and stuff that they send around, or the self harm and all that. You know, this is where the dark web, where it used to be called the dark web, reaches civilization in a really meaningful manner, to the point where it's not just like, oh, it's just in some weird foreign country, we don't know about it. Oh yeah, it's a red room or whatever, all that bullshit. No, no, no. We had direct evidence of several mass casualty events connected with groups of these people. How many victims and kids and people that have been groomed to not only this behavior or to do things that they're against their own will and harm, and then they're sitting here being cavalier and bragging about, like, yeah, listen, I'm in a cult. It's really bad, right? But it's, it's fine. Get them to like cut themselves on camera or like kill a pet or
Yeah.
whatever. It's fine. It's
You
fine.
know, yeah. And I mean, then of course there's layers to this thing, right? And this is actually just the superficial layer. The deeper layers are where you get into, the terrorgram, what's called the terrorgram collective, which is a network of terrorists on Telegram. And some of the figures in they're almost always accelerationist figures. They don't actually care about genociding racial minorities or whatever. They want to spread evil and chaos, and they want to accelerate the collapse of our country. They want to subvert our youth, corrupt our youth. That's their goal. Their goal isn't, whatever the targeted community was, anti-Semitism or racism or whatever. But they are out there trying to get these same kinds of kids, vulnerable kids, to commit mass shootings and school shootings. And we've seen that very specifically happening. We've seen it very specifically. We have proof of it. It's no longer a theory. There's a major network that's about to come out with a film about this. Like a major, like, like it's no longer like when I heard about this,
Like normie
I
of
was
normie
like,
major. Normie of
yeah,
normie major. Yeah.
I was like, I can't express to you how happy it makes me to find out that the mainstream is actually paying attention to this, guys. 2 years ago, I tried to start talking about this. I had my YouTube channel banned. I had people like Destiny and all of those types coming after me, calling me a schizophrenic conspiracy theorist, trying to cancel me. I was harassed to the point where basically I had to almost leave the internet, because I tried to talk about this 2 years ago. So now I can't even describe the feeling that like people in the mainstream are starting to understand this and talk about it. Like I'm just so ecstatic. Like I feel so fucking vindicated. Screw those assholes.
Yeah, it's big time. You know, you and I have been talking about this. Like, I don't remember how I stumbled across you. Oh, I remember. You were in Gorilla Blanco's space, and I just popped in. I was like, "Oh no, I understand this. What do you
It
got?"
was
And that's
about
when
the
you and
yeah,
I
it was
became
part of it, the
friends.
Jade Parker stuff. I think that's
Yeah,
what, yeah.
yeah. I was like, "Nope, I understand this. Let's be friends." And then it's we every day. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I'm like, let
I,
me introduce you to this insane world of like
yeah. Yeah, but it makes so much sense to me.
it
It
does. It
really
makes a lot
does.
of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and
It
and
makes
and
more sense than like collectively the entire world is just organically going crazy, and like, these mass shootings are just so viral that it's a viral TikTok trend. Like that's basically what they want you to think, right?
right.
Guns are causing it, SSRIs are causing it, the feds are grooming them. And I would say that when I first started this work, that I was definitely kind of more of the camp of like the FBI's got to play a role in some of these things.
That's
But
where I started. That's where I started. I was like,
yeah.
"There's
And
just
then
no way."
I haven't found anything. Like I'm a
No.
very fact-based person, right? Like that doesn't mean that something's not true, right? But like I just want to be I'm very agnostic. So if I can't see it, if I can't prove it for myself, I want to remain skeptical of that. And so far what I found is the people who are grooming these kids are criminal terrorists, like terrible people. Some of them are in foreign countries. Some of them have even been arrested recently. Seems like the FBI is finally starting to do their jobs and arrest these really big bad guys, because for a couple of years once I started to realize that, okay, it's not the feds grooming these kids, but why aren't the feds arresting the people who are grooming these kids? That was something that really bothered me for a long time, until I started to get really deep into this research and really like reading criminal complaints and kind of understanding now that it's partially because the system that they're working with is really inefficient. First of all, like I don't know why it takes them 2 years to like build a case against someone like Butcher, but it does. It takes them 2 years to build that case. um Maybe they could figure out how to be a bit more expedient. Like I'm not quite done criticizing them yet, okay? However, what my research has showed me is that they are going after these people when they know where to look. Sometimes it's also hard because these guys may not have broken a law, believe it or not. It's pretty hard to prosecute somebody on a crime of saying something over the internet, right? So if they weren't the person who actually like put the gun in this kid's hand and drove him to the grocery store or whatever, if they were just online provoking him, indoctrinating him for years with their extremist ideologies or giving him advice or provoking him or inciting him in some way, that's kind of hard to prove. A good lawyer can get you off. So yeah, it's very complicated. It's definitely not as, well, go arrest that guy. Like that's what I used to think. Now I can see that it's way more complicated. Like they want to have a bulletproof case. Unfortunately, it takes them, in my opinion, too long still to take down these guys who are doing the grooming, because you can't just keep chopping the head off the hydra that they create, right? They're just going to keep respawning new heads. You actually have to like attack this problem at the core and take out the ringleaders, right? It's the same thing as like a drug ring. If you just keep arresting the low level drug pushers on the street corner, you're never really going to stop anything because there's an unlimited number of those, right? But the kingpins, the ones who are actually the boss, that's when you're going to actually make a difference, when you take that guy down. So I understand, but to me that's kind of how I feel that works. Like we need to take down these really big ringleader types in order to see any kind of like measurable difference in this stuff.
Which brings us to Butcher. Let's talk about Butcher. So Butcher is a Georgian national, and not the state, the country, right? A lot of this is occurring in Eastern Europe. And Butcher found himself where he thought he was grooming someone and turned out to be somebody else. Do you want to kind of take people through the Butcher story here? Because
Yeah.
he is one of those really, really bad
Right.
guys. One of
We'd
those
seen
ringleaders.
Butcher, like we'd seen him floating around, and we'd seen we knew who he was. We knew he was connected to MKU. We'd seen him saying things to people like, "Yeah, I want to get kids to commit mass shootings because of evil. I want to spread murder and chaos and collapse the West." Like he's so obvious about it that it was like, "Well, look at that guy. There he is. That's the
Well,
one."
right. And
You
like he
know.
was so obvious about it. How many books did he write? Or like how many pamphlets or like
Um.
guides?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's up for debate. The criminal complaint says that he authored the Hater's Handbook, but I think that he basically just authored the third edition. I'm not going to get into the weeds on that. Okay, he had produced a lot of propaganda material, yes, and had written a lot of propaganda material and things to group people, things like terrorism guides, killing guides, how to build bombs, how to make rice and poison and stuff like that. But while we were watching this guy, we didn't know that at the same time he was in DMs with somebody who he was trying to groom to commit a mass casualty attack on New York City. His plot was to get this person to hand out poison-laced candy to kids for a mass casualty event, which is disgusting and horrible, right? On Christmas, no less. He wanted to do this, dress like Santa and hand out poison candy to kids. The person that he was trying to solicit to do that was an undercover federal agent. And that's how they eventually took him down. Now, also on another aspect of this is that Butcher was a Georgian national and he was currently living in Moldova. So a lot of these guys, what we've seen is like these guys in Eastern Europe, especially, or like even like someplace like Libya and like, Serbia, right? They think they're untouchable because they live in these foreign countries and they don't think the FBI can reach them. But we're proving that that's not true. In fact, there was another arrest just like last week, I think, in Serbia and one in Romania. So they're taking these guys from Eastern Europe down. They're not Like, they're not invincible over there. They're not untouchable. I'm hoping that maybe some of those other really bad guys in those kind of countries will take note of that and start to realize that they're not untouchable over there in their little Eastern Europe corner.
Yeah, the Romanian one was interesting because he live streamed him killing a woman, I believe,
Well,
just a
this is a
random.
different one, but that guy was arrested in Romania. I'm talking about people who the DOJ have arrested of
Oh,
like,
right.
yeah. But yeah, that's a different situation. The two I'm talking about are the ones who are responsible for um uh swatting attacks against Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tim Pool. And they were also connected to the same network.
Tim actually talked about that the other day. He said, "I don't." They said that they got a guy, but I just don't think it's him. He knows too many personal things. And I'm like, "Oh, Tim, we're gonna have to sit down. We're really gonna have to sit down with you
Yeah,
on
they
this
know
one."
who it is. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
they know it. I mean, I know it too. They also swatted Lucas Gage.
yeah.
So
Same people. Yeah,
yeah, they've been trying to swat Aiden Ross and like that's their thing. They like to do that stuff. They and a lot of times it's like sometimes it'll be somebody else kind of claiming affiliation with a different group. So the people who swatted Lucas Gage were claiming to be 764, but we don't actually know if that's true or not, or if it's just somebody trying to like, LARP is them. But it's complicated. It doesn't matter. Whatever. They're all little criminal shitheads. And they're obviously not as safe and secure as they thought they were in Serbia, which is good news.
it is. It is. And so I hope we can take all these people down. I did. I was glad to see Butcher get taken down, and many of these other people. I think Acid was another big one that was taken down.
Yeah, and he's in the UK. There were two more arrests, which haven't been released publicly yet. So I can't like really post about it like an article yet. But there were two more arrested who were connected to NLM, this No Lives Matter movement, same as Acid. And so there are two more arrested in the UK, a man and a woman, um, who were
It,
planning a bombing, I think.
it's just so crazy. I But so guys, real quick refresher. We'll probably close it down very soon. Like this is a topic that you could either go 10 hours on, and it gets really dense and heavy, or we need to be short and sweet to kind of carry the message. But up in the nest, there are three posts. There's the Kyle Spitz that we were talking about, the original video, and her article here on X. There's also the link to the Substack up there with the Bart Simpson, and then obviously link to the YouTube channel that is reposting her content on her behalf on YouTube. So that's all there. You guys can go follow that. But if you guys want to come up and ask any questions, anything you guys want to add, this would be that time. Kate Ross posted down in the chat. She said, I saw it earlier. She said, I wonder if people would be interested in the way that O9A recruits at a mainstream events. I'm interested to hear about that. Because where would they do that? What mainstream event would they do that? I don't know, Metal Fest maybe? I don't know where their targets would be. That's
Oh, I
interesting.
was like talking on mute because I'm a dummy.
Go ahead.
Is she in here right now? Because I'd love to
Yeah,
hear her talk about that. Like,
I see her.
yeah. So if she wants to, but she's done a lot of parallel work, and I actually we just recently found each other. But we're doing similar work. She's done a lot of work on like Blood Tribe and Patriot Front and those kind of groups. And so those guys have mainstream events, right? Like Charlottesville, Unite the Right rally,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
other
yeah. And
things.
like
So yeah,
Satanic Front, I think you said is in Texas.
Satanic. Well, I mean, obviously it's going to be like an international thing, but the founder of Satanic Front, one of the founders, is in Texas supposedly. But yeah, Texas based, I guess, because that's where. But those guys don't. They might meet in person, but it's going to be like less conspicuous. Whereas the guys like Blood Tribe and Patriot Front, those are the guys marching around that everybody's always calling feds because they just look so ridiculous and out of place. But I like let Kate talk on it if she wants to.
Hey,
I'll
Kate.
talk a little bit. Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for sharing space with me, Bex. We've been talking. It appears that our research intersects a little bit. I follow I've been researching, I guess, for the past 4 years, accelerationist neo-Nazi groups like Blood Tribe. Um, and then, Bex is in looks at like the satanic, uh, like 09A and some of that stuff. But I was, and I'm sure Bex probably knows way more about this than I do, but a couple years ago, I was working on a project with a former 09A member. And I was like floored when they told me like how they recruited. Like she didn't give me a lot of it was a woman, she didn't give me a lot of examples, but she said that they would go to like a QAnon event and they don't like have like they're not religious. Like I mean they're they want to bring I guess they want to bring on the end times. So sorry, I'm getting like nervous talking.
Oh, you're
Um
doing great. No, it's just us three talking. Don't worry about it.
and she told me that they would like pick like different scripture out of the Bible, like mostly from Revelations. And like I've read the Bible, but it's been a while, to like attract, folks who, had like a certain Christian background and try to recruit them to the group. And I just couldn't believe that like they would set up a booth at like a mainstream thing like that. Of course it wouldn't say like Order of 90 Angels or anything. So that I just
Well, that
I'm sure.
actually makes sense to me, Kate.
Yeah.
Me being more on like the conservative side, like my personal politics is, I'm a Trump guy. I do a lot of political stuff. This is just another lane that I feel is very important that needs to get out. That's why I put so much effort and time in talking about it. But that makes sense with me with some of the Q people because a lot of those people kind of intersected into a lot of things that I do. And a lot of them would find their way into like this because I work a lot in like the censorship, industrial complex lanes, the lawfare lanes, like corrupt government and DHS. I kind of chase those things down in CISA, but those so I intersected with a lot of them, and many of them are susceptible to being psyoped into something. They're very susceptible people. Some of them are, and some of them chase things that there's no dots to connect. There's nothing there, but the incredible amount of faith they have behind what they believe is being presented to them goes almost to their core. I've noticed. So, Kate, that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah,
Believe it or not.
you know what? One thing that doesn't make sense to me is like I've heard the QAnon stuff before, and I actually it's funny because I just had like this leader of Satanic Front talking to me in my comment section, and he mentioned something about the QAnon thing being bogus, and like I believe that that happened. I don't believe anything he says because he's the leader of Satanic Front, but could you describe like? Do you have any idea how they would actually go into a QAnon event as Satanists and convince these people to like do things like that's fascinating to me, right? Because it's literally like the devil like infiltrating their group that's focused on like the light, which is it's actually so it's like such a powerful story. I just wish I knew more about it.
I have to go back and look through my chat history from a couple of years ago and even see if it didn't, it might be on Signal and disappearing. But in a way, it kind of makes sense because, a lot of times people cling strongly to beliefs or they want to find a universal theory to that makes sense to them to make their fear go away or, whatever it is. Like what, QAnon is an umbrella for there's all different types of QAnon. And like some of uh, friends of mine that have got sucked into it, and I live in Washington D.C. and before January 6th, like we all knew it was coming. Like everything shut down. The National Guard was there a few days before shutting down the metro, and I live downtown. And I had someone from my hometown that I hadn't talked to in years call me and tell me I needed to leave the city, and that I needed to have a firearm. And it felt like he was like, you need to come home, you need to come home, like you can't be up there in the city, like bad things are going to happen, like you need to come home. And he was like really really concerned for me. Like I knew it was going to happen on January 6th. It was all over the internet. It was like on Trump.win or whatever that Reddit channel was. And then like an old coworker who she was like what is it called? Born again Christian, like when you find God later in life, like George Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Born again.
And she was my favorite coworker. Like we couldn't be more different. She was from Texas. I lived in DC. Um, like this before the pandemic, we all worked remote, and we just had like a lot of the same like her politics were very right and mine very left, but we had a lot of the same value system. And she was like that coworker I call and chat with. And this is after I left my job, and she called me January 4th, and she was like, "Kate, you got to get out of there. The Chinese army is on the Canadian border, and they're coming to DC." And I mean, it was so sincere, and I had no idea that she was into like any of these kind of some of these QAnon forums, because she ended up sharing them with me later, like some of these kind of strange forums online. And both these people are calling me very worried because they care about me, and I didn't like tell them they were wrong, or like these people cared about me, and I assured them I'd be okay. And but like both of those people, um, the young man who called me, he's actually the younger brother of my best friend who died when we were 23. We grew up down the street from each other, and he has bipolar, and he's evangelical Christian. Nothing's wrong with that, but I think maybe the two mixed together might have, depending on like when he was taking meds and stuff. And then my coworker, and it was just we like everybody wants an like I don't know a person in the world, like myself included, who doesn't want like a solution, for problems and the world's ills. And I think that's why we cling to things that may not make sense to other people. And she mentioned some books from the Revelations that they use to like recruit like Christians. It was just so bizarre. Um, I'll try to dig it up and see if I can back us and we can chat about it. But
Yeah,
I
I
was
would
I was just I
really
was
be
just
interested to see that.
I was just so floored, you know. And like she talked about like involvement in the Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine, and like 09A out there. Um, it was just like it was wild. Um, and I didn't ask too many questions. That wasn't We were working on a foreign influence project, but I was grateful that she did share a little bit about what that was with me. But yeah, that's I don't really have too much else to add. I study the accelerationists, like the people who like run a race war stuff, and like kind of the messages they spread. And um like Bex, I get a lot of death threats. So but it looks like there's a little bit of crossover between the two things. I mean, it's both of it's accelerationism, and then there's also like some guys in some of the groups that I follow that have been charged with CSAM and stuff like that. And now I want to exchange some names with her to see if they're in these other Telegram circles, because I'm looking at a certain group of Telegram circles as well. Just curious to the crossover on them. But thanks for letting me share.
Yeah. No, thanks, Kate. Appreciate it. I don't know where Bex went, but
I'm here.
I thought she was going to respond. Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah, no, I'd be really interested in seeing that QAnon stuff. And yeah, our research definitely intersects. So we've definitely been sharing a lot of information back and forth over the past few days since we like kind of found each other on Twitter, because the reason we found each other was because of that chick Rachel Siegel. Have you seen that trash? That girl who's like at the Palestine
Yeah. The
protests?
one. Yeah, the one with the T-shirt and all that. It was the purple hair or
Yeah,
whatever.
she's actually a bad one, like it turns out. I thought she was just LARPing, but I don't know. That's a topic
She's
for a
not just
different
trolling.
space probably.
Probably, but she's not just trolling. I'd be interested to hear what you got on that, because I kind of just laughed it off as she's trolling or whatever.
You know,
Interesting.
it took a lot of research, but there's some like very high level like social engineering type people with her that are I wouldn't even speak their names because I'm already that scared of them. Um,
I
that
wonder if we
are
know those names.
behind her.
Bex,
Yeah, we do.
B, I wonder
Yeah.
if we know those
We do.
names. Yeah, we do.
Bex, no,
Okay.
like when I brought it up to Bex, like
Yeah.
we were chatting on like comments, and then I was like, let's slide into DMs because I don't want to say their names out loud.
I don't think anybody should say their names out loud.
It's
I
like
mean, I
it's
will
like
because
a
because
it's
I'm a
like a Candyman. Like if you say their names 3 times, except not David Myatt though. You can just say his name once on Twitter and he'll find you, because he
yeah,
like
yeah.
literally
I've seen that.
searches for his name all day long on Twitter.
Well, there's a couple other people. There's a couple other people that B that you and I have talked
Yeah,
about in the
yeah,
past.
it's the same guys.
That I'm not going to speak their name. I'm not going to speak their name either. But they all operate. A lot of them were operating on the Q side of things.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
a
why.
similar people. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's
anyways,
what I'm
yeah, I don't
saying.
want to
So like,
make anyone uncomfortable, but yeah, there's some spooky.
yeah, no, we're
This is
done.
like a completely
But yeah,
different rabbit hole at this point.
yeah, yeah. But
which
anyway, so
which which makes her dangerous in that sense that she's
yes,
being funded, and
Yeah, that's
she
true.
got really mad. So what I did when I found out who she was, like um when I ID'd her, like 4 a.m. after the night she appeared, like I figured out who she was, and talked to some other researchers, and so I called her mom, because she's Jewish, and she was, race war now, swastikas, and I was like, oh my god, their family is gonna get harassed till the end of days. Like, I kind of know how these things go, and her mom gave me some background on on her, and we talked a couple of times through the week, but which also informed me that this wasn't just like she was pretending for attention or something. So it was, some long held beliefs
But
she had.
also that she's, she deals with mental illness too, which is something
Hmm.
that we see very frequently with these people who are basically like puppets, they're the proxy soldiers. And I think she probably fits somewhat into that camp as a person who has, mental illness issues.
Yeah. But they're not like things she was saying she believed. But, sometimes people take advantage of people who are saying what they want them to say when they're not doing well, like when they're sick. So it's, it's really sad. She's only 21.
Yeah, it's
So,
wild to see this. I mean, I think Trash mentioned this at the beginning of the stream, but I've been spending almost all day tracking a guy who's a targeted individual who's being groomed right now, like as we speak. And it's like, this guy could be a mass shooter tomorrow, right? And everybody would, s to spit and all of this. But like at this point right now, we're like, dude, this guy just literally needs help. Like he is not well, it's you feel sorry for him. Like they're just not well people and they're being manipulated and exploited. So to different
yeah,
extents, obviously. I mean, this guy's actually like a delusional schizophrenic with no idea what up and down are. Whereas I think Rachel probably has a little bit more autonomy. But
yeah, yeah. I actually shared audio with you, Bex, of my stalker he has a chance to enter a plea on next next week, and the week after he goes to a bench trial for violating another woman's anti-stalking order. But he actually planned a school shooting on a Twitter space, and I sent you the audio Bex, of it. Um,
yeah, I'll have to listen to that later.
he got kicked out of multiple high schools, and it took like ended up making friends with like three other women that he was stalking, and that he's local to our area, and it's just like he's threatened multiple school shootings. Eventually, he got arrested breaking into an elementary school that he threatened to shoot up. And then, like, if you listen to the court testimony, like JTTF is there. Like, they were in the courtroom, and he was like, that was when he was like 18, and he's like 26 now. So they've like been watching him for this long. And when he's planning the school shooting in the Twitter space, like he was still on probation for J6, which he actually went to jail for because he went to J6 with an ankle monitor on for the breaking into the elementary school thing. He's also has mental
Yeah,
illness,
it sounds like it.
and um, like in the court records and stuff, it like the they've like begging him to do therapy and take his Abilify or no Ciprexa or something. So it's very troubling. And just to like, but since like Bex was saying with like, you have people, free speech, but when it comes to like the burden where like law enforcement can act, it has to be like a who, what, when, and where. It can't just be like a general threat. Law enforcement can't like act on that. It has to be like a specific target at on a specific day or time, and they have to have the means to do it. So, like in this
Yeah.
Twitter space, he's asking for getting additional firearms for an event in September. So it's like that was pretty specific, and he got put on house arrest after that and had his electronics taken away. But yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, it is. It's tremendously scary, and so I appreciate you coming
He
up, Kate.
actually used to be in
Um,
Patriot Front, but got kicked out.
can you hear me, Kate?
Yeah, can
Okay,
you hear
cool.
me?
Yeah, no, I can hear you fine. Yeah, he
Oh,
was in Patriot Front. Okay.
but he got
Well,
kicked out because they thought he was a Fed because he kept
How
suggesting they do really
ironic.
illegal things. I know.
So funny.
He kept suggesting doing
The
really
group that
very
everyone calls
violent, illegal
feds
things.
kick somebody out for being too fed-like.
Yeah.
That's good.
right. I
It's
appreciate
pretty
you coming
bad.
up. I
All right.
appreciate you. I appreciate you coming up, Kate. If you want to plug anything, go ahead and go for it. Then I'm going to have B go ahead and plug everything, and then we'll probably wind it down. We've been going for about an hour and a half. I like to keep these short and sweet, so they're not too info dense, and people get to the information they need to get to. All the links. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything that you do that you want to share with the group to have them follow?
I'm lying low right now. I've got a lot of threats, but
Fair enough.
but I follow kind of like the neo-Nazi groups, the ones that everyone calls feds. And particularly, I care about the ones that are targeting veterans or active duty for their skill set and targeting vulnerable groups. And then just like a lot of these guys, like everybody's like, oh, that's a Fed. I'm like, no, man, that guy goes by Combat Carl. That's not actually his name, but he got out of prison after killing someone. Like these are like not Feds. These are like a lot of them are dangerous people, and I wish people took that more seriously.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned that earlier. I don't know if you were here or not, but as being one of the thought enders that people just go, well, it's all the feds, so I don't have to think about it anymore. And really, it's kind of a cope. Like it's a cope to just say, this is the cause, and I'm not going to look any more into it. And that's one of those things that you can also assign a a high bar of evidence, like because then you'll be like, well, actually, I don't think it is all feds, and like I've seen that personally, I've researched this and seen this and that. And they'll be like, well, that's because you're fed. Or they'll be like, well, that's because they're covering it up. So that's like, there's a 3-step process. It's like, create this conspiracy that you don't have to think about it anymore. And then the second step is to like give it like a super high bar of proof that no one can ever meet, right? Because no one can ever meet your high standard of proof. And then after that,
Yeah.
they just start accusing you of being a Fed, like if you don't agree. And it's really a cycle of
Or
like
yeah,
a
you're
person
Fed,
who's closing their mind
Antifa,
off to
pedophile.
like any reason or rational thinking, right? It's the same thing with the SSRI stuff, right? SSRIs are causing mass shootings. Well, I have not seen evidence of that personally. That's because they're hiding the evidence. And you're like, okay, well, we can't have a conversation because and then they'll be like, you work for big pharma or something. It's just crazy how people will jump through these mental gymnastics to, try to close off their minds to the bigger picture. But yeah, thanks for coming and bringing that up, Kate, because it's really important.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having
So
me.
if you want to anything you want to add, Bex, have people follow you. Go where to go, and we'll
Yeah,
wind it
I mean,
down.
all that stuff up in the nest. There's my Substack, there's my YouTube. I've gotten a lot of really awesome feedback about my YouTube videos. Thank you so much. Like means a lot because I work hard on them. If you haven't watched them yet, like I mean, people have really enjoyed them. I think so. Go watch them. They're not that long. You can put me on 1.5x and listen to me speed run it. And it'll give you a really like concise breakdown of everything that we talked about today, from the mass shootings stuff to the 764 to the Butcher MKU stuff. It's all in there. And I'm working on a fourth video right now. It's going to be about Peyton Gendron. That's also in the nest there in that Substack post. If you want to read what I've dug up on Peyton Gendron, which is definitely more than any other like thing you've read. So it's not just regurgitated news in there. It's like years of research. So please go subscribe to my YouTube and my Substack. Thank you.
All right. Well, everybody, Kate, Bex, I appreciate you. Thanks, you guys, for showing up and listening again. As always, all of my spaces are recorded. They'll always be in the highlights tab. So if you missed halfway through and you want to see what we started with, go back. It'll be in my highlights tab. It'll be there. You can play the recording. There's also additional spaces that we've done on this topic where we've gone much deeper than we went today. You can go back and listen to those as well. But I highly recommend watching those videos. I think you'll be pretty well caught up. But if you want to hear a back and forth banter discourse on that content afterwards, you'll find the spaces there and you'll be able to follow along. We've been doing these for a while, and I cover many, many topics. This is definitely one that I've been involved with, as well as censorship. If you really want to learn about the censorship industrial complex, highly recommend my tabs as well. So appreciate you guys.